Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak Up, the podcast where we help you learn English through real and current topics. If you're joining us for the first time, we're glad to have you. And if you've been listening regularly, thank you for your continued support. Today, we have an urgent and serious update from the Middle East. We're going to talk about how Iran has launched new missile attacks on Israel, and this came just after the United States carried out a major strike on Iran's nuclear sites. It's a very tense situation, and things are moving fast. We'll break it down in simple English so you can follow along, understand what's going on, and improve your listening and speaking skills at the same time.
Hi everyone, I'm Priya, and it's good to be here with you. Today's topic is not only important, but also very serious. Just hours ago, the U.S. launched powerful airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. In response, Iran fired missiles at Israeli cities, causing injuries and damage. The world is now watching closely to see what happens next. In this episode, we'll explain everything step by step, what exactly happened, why it happened, and what it could mean for the future. We'll use clear, simple English, and we'll keep things easy to understand. So stay with us as we dive into the full story.
So let's start with what exactly the United States did. On June 22, 2025, very early in the morning, around 2:30 a.m. Iran time, the U.S. launched a powerful military operation called Operation Midnight Hammer. This wasn't just a small strike, it was a full, high-level military action. B-2 stealth bombers flew across the region and dropped massive bunker buster bombs on three of Iran's most important nuclear sites: Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. These sites are known for enriching uranium, which is used in nuclear weapons. The goal was clear: damage Iran's nuclear capability in one precise but heavy operation.
And these sites are not easy targets. They are built deep underground, protected by layers of concrete and steel. But the bombs used by the U.S. were designed for this exact purpose: to break through and destroy hidden facilities. Along with the bombers, U.S. Navy submarines also launched Tomahawk cruise missiles towards those same locations. Everything happened quickly, within minutes. Iran had no warning, and after the strike, reports and satellite images started confirming that serious damage was done to the nuclear infrastructure. People living near those areas said the ground shook and explosions lit up the sky.
Military experts are calling this one of the most aggressive actions by the US against Iran in years. It wasn't symbolic, it was meant to create real damage. American officials later said the operation severely weakened Iran's nuclear program. They believe it will take Iran months or even years to fully recover. According to statements from the Pentagon, the operation was carefully planned with detailed intelligence. They also said this was a necessary step to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear threat, not just to the US, but also to Israel and other regional allies.
And the emotional impact inside Iran is just as serious as the physical one. People woke up in panic. Videos online show fireballs rising into the night sky and emergency services rushing to the scene. Families near those nuclear plants are frightened, not just from the noise and destruction, but from the unknown. They don't know what's coming next. Iran's government called the attack a violation of its sovereignty, saying the U.S. has committed an act of war. They've promised consequences. And across Iran, there's a feeling of anger and fear spreading very quickly.
Globally, the reaction is mixed. Some countries are supporting the US, saying this was a step to prevent war in the long run. Others are deeply worried, calling it reckless and dangerous. The United Nations held an emergency session just hours after the attack. There's concern this might not end here, that this could pull more countries into conflict. Right now, there's no doubt that the balance in the Middle East has shifted. The US didn't just send a message, they took serious action, and now the world is watching what that leads to.
And the fear of what comes next is real. Iran is already talking about revenge. Their leaders are using strong language, words like punishment, retaliation, and resistance. In the streets, people are scared. Some are preparing for war, others are hoping it won't go that far, but nobody knows for sure. And what's most heartbreaking is that regular people are stuck in the middle. They have no control over these powerful decisions, but they are the ones who suffer the most when things explode.
The scale of this operation shows how serious things have become. It wasn't a warning shot. It was a direct hit at Iran's core nuclear facilities. These are the same places that have been under watch by international agencies for years. Now they're damaged or destroyed. And even though the US is calling it a success, this action has opened the door to something much bigger. Whether that's more attacks or even a wider conflict is something nobody can predict right now.
What's happening right now feels like a turning point, not just for Iran and the US, but for the entire region. The fear is spreading, and the silence after the explosions feels heavier than the attack itself. People are anxious, angry, and uncertain. And even though this was a military operation, the emotional cost is already being felt deeply by families, by communities, by the world. The damage has been done. Now, everyone is holding their breath.
After the US carried out its strike on Iran's nuclear sites, the reaction came fast. Just a few hours later, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, what people call the IRGC, launched a series of ballistic missiles directly at Israel. These weren't just warning shots. These were real, dangerous attacks aimed at major cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Sirens started going off across neighborhoods, and people had to run to shelters in the middle of the night. The entire region was on edge, not knowing how bad it could get.
And even though the US's Iron Dome defense system was able to stop many of the missiles, not all of them were intercepted. Several made it through and hit buildings, streets, and public areas. According to reports, at least 86 civilians were injured. That includes children, elderly people, and families who were just sleeping or getting ready for work. In videos shared online, you can hear glass shattering, people screaming, and ambulances rushing through the streets. It wasn't just fear, it was pure panic.
Some of those injured were in pretty bad condition. Hospitals in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem were packed with people needing help. Firefighters worked for hours to control fires caused by the blasts. People near the strike zone said the ground shook like an earthquake. And for many, this wasn't the first time, but it felt different, heavier. This was a direct hit from Iran, and that carries a much more serious message than rockets from local groups. It's no longer just regional tension, it's now a direct state-to-state confrontation.
Iran didn't hold back in their messaging either. Their military released statements saying they are ready for more strikes, not only against Israel, but even against U.S. military bases in the region. That's a huge threat. Their leaders said this was just a first step in their legitimate response to what they see as an attack on their country's dignity. The language they used wasn't emotional. It was cold, firm, and full of warning. That's what makes it even more unsettling. They're clearly prepared for more action if needed.
You can really feel the pressure building. In both countries, people are scared. Flights have been grounded, schools are closed, people are canceling plans and staying indoors. There's this silence before something happens, and no one knows how big the next move will be. The most painful part is that regular people, families, kids, shop owners, they're the ones paying the price. These decisions are made by leaders and governments, but the fear and pain fall on the everyday person.
Exactly. And that's what's so heartbreaking. People are just trying to live their lives. They're not involved in any of this, but now they're running from missile attacks, hiding in shelters, praying nothing falls near their homes. Some lost their loved ones, others are still searching through broken buildings. It's a terrifying situation, and right now, everyone is waiting. Worried, anxious, and unsure if this is just the beginning of something even worse.
When I saw the footage from Tel Aviv, I couldn't stop thinking about how fast things can change. Just hours earlier, people were going about their daily lives. Then suddenly, everything shifted. And with Iran openly threatening more attacks, there's a real fear that this situation might spiral out of control. The emotions are raw. Anger, fear, sadness, and it's hard not to feel overwhelmed watching it unfold.
It's one of those moments where the world holds its breath. Iran responded with full force, and now everyone feels like they're walking on thin ice. There's no peace, only pressure, and as things stand right now, there's no clear path back to calm. People are hoping for it, praying for it, but no one knows if it's coming anytime soon.
The damage from the recent strikes is still being counted. but the numbers already tell a painful story. While there have been no confirmed deaths so far, at least 86 people have been hospitalized with injuries, some of them serious. Emergency workers in cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are stretched thin. They're trying to keep up with medical care, search operations, and the emotional shock that comes after such violent attacks. Even though no lives were officially lost, the scars, both physical and mental, are already deep.
And the fear is very real. In the neighborhoods that were hit, windows were shattered, buildings damaged, and fires broke out in several places. Parents rushed to protect their children, people hid in stairwells or underground parking lots, praying the next missile wouldn't land nearby. Hospitals are full, not just with those injured by explosions, but also people suffering from panic attacks, heart problems, and trauma. It may sound like just numbers in the news, but behind every number is a person, a life shaken by fear.
Even though places that weren't physically hit are feeling the impact, businesses are closed, streets are almost empty, and daily life has come to a halt. People are afraid to leave their homes. School children stayed indoors all day, some of them too scared to sleep at night. There's a heavy silence across the region, a kind of quiet that comes when people are too afraid to speak, when they're just waiting to see what comes next. And that silence is as powerful as the explosions themselves.
Iran, meanwhile, isn't backing down. Their government released a statement saying that their regrettable responses will continue precisely and fiercely. Those are strong words. They're telling the world that they're not done. They believe they have the right to respond with full strength, and they've made it clear that more strikes could come at any time. This has left millions of people on edge, not just in Israel or Iran, but in neighboring countries too. Everyone's asking the same question: where will the next hit land?
And then there's the economic impact. Within hours of the attack, fuel prices began to climb. Stock markets across the region started reacting, and travel across the Middle East is already being disrupted. Major airlines have canceled or rerouted flights. Businesses that rely on trade are slowing down. Even outside the direct strike zones, the effects are being felt. It shows how one violent moment can ripple across borders, affecting people far from the battlefield.
The psychological toll is harder to measure, but it's heavy. People are exhausted, physically, emotionally, and mentally. In both Israel and Iran, there's sadness in the air. You can see it in their eyes, in the way they speak, in the way they move. There's this deep sense of uncertainty, like everyone knows something worse could still happen. And while politicians speak in big statements, ordinary families are just trying to keep their children calm and find a way to sleep through the night.
I think that's the part that hits the hardest. Real lives being shaken while the world watches from screens. You hear about air defense systems and military strategies, but on the ground, it's about someone's home being destroyed, someone's mother in the hospital, someone's child crying in fear. The impact is not only about the buildings that were hit, but about the peace that was destroyed, piece by piece, for thousands of people.
And sadly, this might only be the beginning. Iran's message was loud. They're prepared to continue. People in Israel are living with that threat hanging over them. And people in Iran are living with anger, pain, and fear of more attacks. The damage isn't over. It's still unfolding. And right now, the world is watching. But the ones who feel it the most are the people who did nothing to start this.
Now we've understood the damage and impact on both Iran and Israel, let's talk about how the rest of the world is reacting, because this isn't just a local fight anymore. This has global attention. The United Kingdom was one of the first to respond. Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke out and warned that the situation could escalate quickly if both sides don't pull back. He said that more violence could lead to disaster, and strongly urged all countries involved to return to diplomacy. His tone was serious, almost like he knew something bigger was coming if this doesn't stop.
That's right. The UK has always had close ties with the US, but even they're saying enough is enough. They don't want to see another war in the Middle East. British officials called for emergency meetings, and leaders across Europe are now discussing ways to calm things down before it gets out of control.
Meanwhile, Russia had a very different reaction. They came out strongly against the U.S. strike, calling it a dangerous violation of international law. Russia believes this kind of action will only make things worse and might even trigger wider conflict in the region.
And that's where the tension really starts to rise. When global powers like the US, the UK, and Russia are not on the same page, it creates even more instability. Russia is already dealing with its own issues in Ukraine and Europe, but this time they've shifted focus and are standing beside Iran, at least politically. It's a reminder that what happens between two countries can easily turn into a much bigger crisis when others start picking sides. The US strike may have been aimed at nuclear facilities, but the impact is now stretching across continents.
And the United Nations is extremely worried too. The Secretary General spoke out with a clear warning. He said this could blow up into a full-scale war if immediate steps aren't taken. He used the word alarming to describe what's happening. The UN is calling for restraint and asking both Iran and the US to avoid any more aggressive action. But right now, words don't seem to be enough. Diplomacy feels weak in the face of missiles and bombs. And the fear is that if someone doesn't step in soon, we might all be watching a much bigger disaster unfold.
There's also growing concern in the Gulf region. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar are on high alert. They know that if this continues, they could easily get pulled in. These countries are not just neighbors, they're also in the path of missiles, drones, and military ships. Some have already increased their military readiness. Airports are tightening security, oil exports are being watched closely. Everyone is bracing for what could happen next, and nobody feels safe right now.
You can feel that tension across the Middle East. People in Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, they're all watching carefully. Many of them still remember past wars, past invasions, and how quickly peace can fall apart. And now, with Iran threatening more strikes and Israel possibly planning its own response, there's real fear that this won't stay limited to just two countries. What's scary is how fast everything has moved, from one night of bombing to a region on the edge of something huge.
And honestly, the world feels split. Some countries are asking for peace, others are choosing sides, but everyone knows one thing for sure. This is not a simple conflict anymore. It's not just about Iran and Israel. It's about global power, military influence, and fear. It's about who controls the narrative and who takes the next step. The world is watching, but no one knows who will act or how far it will go.
And in the middle of all this, the people are still suffering. World leaders talk about strategy and politics, but on the ground, people are scared, hiding, injured, or displaced. Regional reactions might sound like headlines, but they're shaping what happens next. Whether it's diplomacy, more strikes, or even wider war, right now everything feels possible. And that's the part that makes this moment so dangerous.
So far, we've seen Iran respond with direct missile strikes, but that might not be the end of their plans. One of the most serious threats they've made recently is about the Strait of Hormuz. It's a narrow sea passage near Iran that's responsible for moving around 20% of the world's oil. Iran has hinted that they could shut it down if things continue to escalate. That's not just a threat to Israel or the US. That would impact the entire global economy. Oil prices would spike overnight, shipping routes would be blocked, and countries around the world would feel it almost instantly.
Exactly. The Strait of Hormuz is like a lifeline for global oil trade. If Iran actually closes it, we're not just talking about higher gas prices, we're talking about fuel shortages, shipping delays, and serious pressure on everyday people, even in countries far from the Middle East. And what makes it even more alarming is that Iran has done this before. They've threatened to close the strait during previous conflicts. This time, with tensions this high, many experts believe they might actually go through with it if they feel cornered.
And that's not the only card Iran is holding. They also have proxy groups, militias, and armed organizations that are aligned with Iran but operate in other countries. One of the biggest names is Hezbollah, based in Lebanon. Iran supports and funds them, and they've already made statements suggesting they're ready to act if the conflict grows. Hezbollah has thousands of rockets and a long history of fighting Israel. If they get involved, this war could open on multiple fronts.
And it's not just Hezbollah. Iran also has ties with the Houthis in Yemen, a rebel group that has launched missiles and drones into Saudi Arabia in the past. If the Houthis join this conflict, they could target U.S. bases or allies in the Gulf. Iran doesn't need to fire all of its own weapons. It can rely on these groups to act on its behalf. That's what makes the situation more complex. It's not just one country against another. It's a network, and if one part moves, the whole region could light up.
These threats are bigger than just military moves. They're about control and pressure. By threatening oil routes and using proxy groups, Iran is sending a message. We have options, and we're not afraid to use them. It's a way to scare not just governments, but global markets, investors, and ordinary people. And honestly, it's working. The world is nervous, stocks are unstable, everyone's watching, wondering how far Iran is willing to go.
And there's also a deeper strategy behind all this. Iran knows that it can't match the US or Israel in direct military strength, but it can use unpredictability. That's their weapon: surprise, confusion, indirect attacks. If they block oil or activate Hezbollah or the Houthis, they force the world to react. It creates pressure, not just on the battlefield, but in politics, finance, and diplomacy. And while the world focuses on missiles, Iran is quietly building leverage.
The scary part is that many of these threats could be carried out without warning. One day, ships move through Hormuz freely. The next, there are mines in the water. One moment, there's calm in Lebanon. The next, rockets are flying into northern Israel. Iran's threats aren't just words anymore. They've already acted once, and now everyone's wondering what their next move will be. And if it's big, the whole region could explode.
And in moments like this, it's not just about governments or armies. It's about how the world holds together under pressure. People are anxious, leaders are nervous, and every headline feels heavier than the last. Iran has made it clear they won't step back quietly, and now everyone has to decide how to respond before things go even further.
We've talked about missiles, military threats, and politics, but now let's talk about something even more personal: what this crisis means for regular people. The first thing already happening is that oil prices are rising. In just a few hours after the US strike and Iran's response, global oil markets reacted. Prices jumped, and they're expected to go even higher if things continue. That might sound like just numbers, but for people like you and me, it means fuel at the pump gets more expensive, delivery costs go up, and transport becomes harder for everyday families.
Exactly. And it's not just oil. Flights are already being delayed or canceled across the Middle East. Airlines are avoiding dangerous airspace over Iran, Iraq, and even parts of Israel. That affects thousands of travelers, workers, and families. Some flights are now going longer routes to stay safe, which also means higher ticket prices. People with business trips, holidays, or even family emergencies are suddenly stuck, not knowing when they can move. This conflict is literally changing the way people travel.
And let's bring it closer to home. Countries like Pakistan and India are already feeling the pressure. Our markets depend on oil, international trade, and regional stability. When something this big happens in the Middle East, it hits South Asia too. Fuel prices in Pakistan and India could rise even more in the coming days. Industries that rely on imports or exports might slow down. It doesn't matter if you're a small shop owner or someone trying to run a business. Costs are going up and people are worried.
Exactly. And it's not just oil. Regular households will feel it too. When fuel becomes more expensive, everything else slowly follows. Groceries cost more, transportation costs more, and power bills may go up too, especially in countries that rely on oil imports. It's frustrating because the people affected the most are the ones who had nothing to do with the war. They're just trying to live their lives, feed their families, get to work, and now they're being pulled into the effects of a global crisis they didn't create.
The emotional stress is also rising. When people watch the news and see missiles flying, oil prices jumping, and flights canceled, it creates fear and uncertainty. Parents worry about their kids' futures. Workers are scared of losing jobs. Business owners are afraid of losses. Even if you're not in Iran or Israel, that feeling of instability creeps in. People start asking, will this get worse?
Will it reach our country? Should I be preparing for something bad?
And the scary part is, we don't know. Things are changing hour by hour. If the Strait of Hormuz gets blocked, or if another missile lands in a sensitive area, everything could shift again. That kind of unpredictability makes it really hard for people to plan anything. Students studying abroad, families saving for big life events, or people already struggling financially, all of them are now facing even more uncertainty. And that's what hurts the most, the fear of the unknown.
This isn't just a conflict between countries. It's a wave that touches millions of lives. From truck drivers in Lahore to farmers in India to airline staff in Dubai, people everywhere are bracing themselves. Even if the missiles stop tomorrow, the economic pain will stay for a while. And that's what makes this moment so heavy. It's not just about who wins or loses, it's about how much regular people lose while the power play their games.
And honestly, it's heartbreaking. The world keeps spinning, the headlines keep changing, but for the everyday person just trying to survive, these moments bring real struggles. Food, fuel, safety, travel, all of it is connected. And when war threatens those basic things, people start to break inside. That's the real damage, not just what you see in buildings, but what you feel in people's lives.
Finally, let's talk about what could happen next, because right now, the world is holding its breath. The biggest question everyone's asking is, will Israel strike back again? After Iran's missile attacks on Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, there's strong pressure on the Israeli government to respond. Some officials are already calling for a powerful military reply, but others are warning that a bigger strike could push the region into full-scale war. So far, Israel hasn't officially said what they'll do, but the military is clearly on alert and fighter jets are in the skies.
And then there's the United States. Many people are wondering, will the U.S. get more directly involved? They've already hit Iran once with Operation Midnight Hammer, but now, with Iran warning of more retaliation, the U.S. has two paths ahead: double down with more military action, or pull back and push for diplomacy. Inside the White House, both options are being discussed. Some want to show strength. Others fear a larger war could cost too much in lives, money, and global trust. It's a delicate moment, and no one knows which direction Washington will take.
What makes it even more dangerous is the threat from Iran's proxy groups, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and even armed groups in Iraq. They're all keeping a close eye on what's happening. If just one of them acts, fires a missile, targets a US base, or launches a drone strike, this conflict could explode in many different directions. These groups are heavily armed and deeply loyal to Iran, and if they feel Iran is under attack, they might join the fight without waiting for orders. That's what's keeping military analysts up at night.
And the truth is, regular people across the region are terrified, not just in Israel and Iran, but in countries like Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Pakistan, and even India. Everyone's watching for signs: fighter jets flying overhead, troop movements, explosions, or even just sudden power cuts. Social media is filled with rumors, fear, and anxiety. People are asking, should I leave the city? Should I cancel travel plans? Will my job be safe next week? The future looks more uncertain now than it has in years.
There's also the global stage to consider. Countries like China, Turkey, Germany, and France are all calling for calm. The United Nations is trying to hold emergency talks, but everyone knows words alone might not be enough this time. If just one wrong move happens, one strike too many, or one miscalculation, this could spiral fast. Leaders have a narrow window to stop this before it turns into something even worse. And sadly, the world has seen what happens when those chances are missed.
Right now, everything feels fragile. People are tired. They want peace. But with military equipment moving, borders tightening, and alliances hardening, that peace feels far away. We're standing at a point where every hour could bring new headlines, new pain,
or hopefully a step toward talks, but nothing is certain. And that's the scariest part. We all hope this calms down, but we also have to be honest, this situation is not over.
We'll be keeping a close eye on any updates, whether it's a diplomatic move, another strike, or a major statement from a world leader. Things are changing fast. And what happens next won't just affect two countries. It could impact people all over the world. From oil prices to air safety to peace instability, we're all connected to this moment in some way.
Thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. Whether you're new here or you've been with us for a while, we appreciate your time and attention. These are difficult conversations, but it's important to stay informed and understand what's really happening. Please take care of yourselves, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode.